Hi guys, this is Kimmy Yanks and welcome to my YouTube channel. I was in the middle of uploading a lot of content from the 2025 F1 Belgian GP weekend, but the recently concluded Italian Grand Prix at Monza forced me to make this video feature on YouTube. And today I will be discussing about McLaren's team orders, or rather the Monza dilemma for McLaren. The team instructed its two drivers to swap positions, something which has not sat too well with the fans. And I've seen a fair amount of reactions all across social media, a lot of experts filling in on all that transpired during the race, and a lot of other content creators sharing their views of this decision. And I really wanted to take my time, weigh the options before I finally talk of what exactly transpired in the race, and rather present my own viewpoint. Well, before we kick things off, I personally believe that Oscar Piastri will walk away with the crown at the end of the season, because my personal opinion is that he's more consistent of the two McLaren drivers. And before we delve into dissecting and analyzing what exactly unfolded in Monza, let me just quickly have a look at the constructors standings, because McLaren seems to be running away with this title fight, and they are comfortably clear of Ferrari, who is in P2. Ferrari is on 280 points, while McLaren is on 617. With 8 races to go, their first match point will be in Baku, and if the McLaren drivers finish 1-2, then that's the second Constructors Championship for McLaren. In itself is an amazing feat, considering that they've had a fair amount of time in the wilderness. If you look at the Drivers' Championship, well, it was really tough on Lando Norris to retire in Zandvoort with a mechanical failure, and that kind of extended the gap between the two drivers to 34 points. After the Italian GP, Lando is still 31 points adrift of Oscar, and we still have 8 races to go. During the race, we saw that Max pitted on lap 38, followed by Oscar, who pitted on lap 46, and then Lando, who pitted on lap 47. Usually, between two drivers, strategy is such that the lead driver gets to pit first, but McLaren wanted to cover Oscar against Charles. That's why he had the early stop, a lap earlier than Lando, of course. While Oscar had a clean stop, Lando had a problem on his left front tire. The wheel nut did not lock itself properly, so that costed him time, and when he did exit the pits, he ended up behind Oscar Piastri. The communication that got relayed to that got relayed to all our television screens was that McLaren asked Oscar to give up the position to Norris, because he had track position up until that slow stop. There was a little bit of discontent, or rather surprise, expressed by Oscar, because having a slow pit stop is part and parcel of racing, and it's down to pure luck. It can happen with anyone. So, but yeah, Oscar still decided to go ahead with the team instructions, and like the team reiterated to him twice, it was like Hungary last year. Hungary, where Oscar did score his first victory, and it was Lando who gave up his race win on the last lap to allow Oscar to secure his maiden victory. McLaren wanted him to return the favor. Of course, when the swap did happen, Lando was appreciative of Oscar and thanked him on the radio for his gesture. But of course, considering the fact that these two are title contenders, all of us were really eager to see these two battle, rather than see a very tame swap happening between the two McLaren drivers. I think we need to go back in time. I would like to talk of McLaren as a team. We've seen McLaren have its fair share of success, the second most successful team on the grid after Ferrari. We remember the domination they had in the 90s with Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, two alpha drivers, numero unos, world championships between them. And we also remember the coming togethers that they had on track. The most infamous, of course, was the one in Suzuka in Japan. Fast forward, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso in the 2007 season. It was actually the strongest driver pairing of the grid that year, but everything fell apart very quickly because Fernando, who was coming from Renault as a double world champion, wanted to assert his ascendancy within the team, whereas Lewis, who was the new kid on the grid but also a McLaren protege and someone who had set the lower series on fire, uh, wanted to show that he had all the means and the abilities to take on the best of the world. So, if we look at these two alpha drivers in McLaren from two different eras, we see a very different approach that was taken up by McLaren, and there was a fair bit of balance that McLaren tried to maintain between the two garages. It didn't come off well. If we were to look at the times when Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard were racing, Mika, of course, won the title in 1998 and 1999. And if you've seen Mika Hakkinen's previous interviews, we've heard it from him quite often, where he talks of sitting on the table with Ron Dennis and David Coulthard, and telling David Coulthard at the end of the 1999 season, David, it's your time now to win a championship. So there was a healthy camaraderie between the teammates, and there was open support by Mika to help David win a world title. Fast forward it to 2005 and 2006, when we had Kimi Raikkonen and Juan Pablo Montoya. Montoya, of course, was the alpha driver in Williams, and he made the switch to the Silver Arrows partner, the Flying Finn, in Kimi Raikkonen, who himself was gunning for the title in 2003 and then as well as in 2005. Of course, McLaren's reliability problems and strategic calls did not help them secure that world title for Kimi. But we still had two numero uno drivers in that team, and they had a very good relationship. Of course, there was a very strong and feisty battle between the teammates whenever they were on track together. But at the same time, there was a respect, and it was a very healthy atmosphere within the team. I personally feel that McLaren enjoyed those years, and they want to bring back, those times into this current garage with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And like I said in the earlier part of my video, they've had years of wilderness with no titles to show. And when you actually go through such a prolonged period, your entire focus, your entire effort is directed towards ensuring that you end up where you should be, at the sharp end of the grid, fighting for race wins and fighting for a title. After a very prolonged effort and so many personnel changes, development paths, they finally achieved that feat in 2024 with the same pair of drivers, and now they want to continue this success into 2025 as well as into 2026, even with the technical regulations change. So for any team, not just McLaren, the Constructors Championship is what matters for them. With Max running away in Monza and practically being uncatchable, it never really mattered to McLaren who was P2 and who was P3. As long as their drivers were P2 and P3, the order didn't matter. So their philosophy was to maintain status quo as was up until the pit stops. And I think if I were to look at this from a team standpoint, then yes, I can agree with them to an extent, because that maintains fairness, just like GP, Max's race engineer, pointed out. And at the same time, it also maintains a balance within the team, where the team eventually has the final say. We've seen those years in Mercedes when Lewis and Nico went at it in 2014 to 2016, and there were times when it was very, very difficult to handle two drivers for Toto Wolff, but he did it with a lot of ease. McLaren did a fine job there with Andrea Stella and Randy Singh, of course, who is also a part of the pit wall that sits at the races. From a team standpoint, this definitely was the right call to make. The second point, I don't know if the word appeasement would be the right term to describe this, but I feel that after Lando's mechanical failure in Zandvoort, McLaren definitely owed him some sort of compensation, if I can put it that way. Because if Lando had finished P2, the title fight would be a lot closer. The points being 13 instead of 31, that would separate the two drivers. It wasn't as if the team denied either driver the opportunity to race. So, if you do listen to the radio communications between both the drivers and the teams and their respective race engineers, Oscar was very clearly told by his engineer that once he lets Lando pie, he can actually race him to the flag. So it wasn't as if they were denied that opportunity. There was a performance differential or a performance delta between the two drivers. If you see Lando's performance versus Oscar's performance, not just in Monza but also in Zandvoort, Lando had the measure of him in the first sector in both the tracks. So Oscar was lagging in that aspect but was able to make up some time in sector 2 and sector 3. So yeah, there was definitely a performance delta, and the last thing the team would have wanted was both of them fighting and jeopardizing their own the team's constructor chances, because coming together is the last thing that McLaren wants, something that we've seen in Canada as well. Oscar didn't really have the pace to match Lando's on those soft tires. Also, the one thing that we must remember is that when we saw the Lewis versus Nico battles, they've been friends for years now. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. They know exactly what the other guy will do in a close battle situation, and yeah, that's why their fights or their wheel-to-wheel battles were exciting to watch. Oscar and Lando, even though they've been together for almost 3 seasons now, both of them can come off worse if we see a wheel-to-wheel battle, the because the turns at Monza are such where you can actually have a lot of wheel banging or body damage when you have close quarter battles. And the third and the most important point, I think, is McLaren have shown time and again this season that both drivers are very much relevant to them. They want both these drivers to be a part of their success journey in Formula One. I think both the drivers have done exceptionally well. Lando, of course, has been through the time when McLaren was struggling to find the right balance and become consistent in giving good results and victories. So Lando has been a part of that journey, whereas Oscar has come into a team which was already tending towards success. So I think it is very important for McLaren to express publicly that these two drivers are important for them, and that's what we've seen in this driver swap. And we also see the same trust and faith being acknowledged by the drivers. Of course, many would call it a PR narrative in the media pen or so on and so forth, but there is a very strong emphasis by both the drivers to commit to the racing mentality or the racing culture that McLaren wants to adopt between them, which I think creates a very healthy atmosphere within the team. Because even when you have two garages that are gunning for a driver's title, yes, there is feisty wheel-to-wheel racing. Yes, there is a fair amount of racing that we'll see on track, but at the same time there is a healthy relationship of it, and that is a very important aspect for making and building race winning cars and championship winning cars. So personally, for me, I think McLaren is doing a great job there. I know a lot of Oscar fans feel hard done and want to call out on Lando, trying to assert or manipulate the team into doing something that is uncharacteristic. And I also know some Lando fans who aren't really endorsing the fact that Oscar has been the better driver this year. Luck can go either ways. You can have mechanical failures, reliability issues, and McLaren has had a history of that in the past. And I, as a Kimi Raikkonen fan, know this too well from those years in 2003 and 2005 when Kimi was so close and yet so far from winning titles with the Silver Arrows. So yeah, I think that debate will never end, and we can talk late into the night. The fact of the matter is that McLaren called it, and the driver stood by it. End of story. We move on to the next race. Does that mean we will not see good wheel-to-wheel racing between the two title contenders? That's not true, because once McLaren does have the Constructors' Championship in the bag, and if they don't really want to go for that 1,000 points tally, which will be a crazy achievement in its own right, I think McLaren wouldn't really bother or won't really doctor a result. So I really think all down to the Constructors Championship, and once that's done, then we will see more feisty wheel-to-wheel action between Oscar and Lando. These were my views of what unfolded in the final laps of the Italian GP in Monza, with McLaren, of course, being the center of attention, thanks to their decision to swap the driver positions. And yeah, I think once McLaren does secure that constructors title, we will see them allow the drivers to go all out, gloves off, and have feistier wheel-to-wheel racing, and tougher battles, subject to not causing damage, and probably helping McLaren even reach that 1,000 points tally, which will be unheard of up until now in Formula One history. So yeah, you can never say never, but for me personally, in a broader perspective, I really think that McLaren is doing a brilliant job, and kudos to Zach Brown and Andrea Stella, the supremos in McLaren. Of course, Andrea Stella has been in Formula One long enough. He's an old head, and he knows how to handle these controversial situations quite well. So guys, this brings me to the end of my video. Please do let me know what your take is on all this. I'll be leaving the links to my other social media handles in the description below, so if you want to connect with me elsewhere, please do so. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. There will be the remaining videos from the Belgian Grand Prix weekend coming your way shortly as well, so watch this space. And yeah, this is Kimi Yanks signing off. Take care guys, and I will see you again very shortly.